In doctor's offices thousands of times a day. You walk in, you list your symptoms, you get a prescription, and you leave. We call it healthcare, but really it's often just disease management. We're patching holes in the boat rather than asking why the boat is leaking in the first place. But what if the body isn't just a machine that breaks down? What if it's actually a self-correcting system that, given the right inputs, knows exactly how to fix itself? Today, we're looking at the collision between ancient wisdom and modern survival. We're talking about acupuncture, the limits of the conventional medical model, and the profound, sometimes unexplained power of hope.
I'm Noah, and this is the deep dive you've been waiting for. To help us parse this out, I'm joined by Eloise. Eloise, we're looking at the work and the story of Dr. Robin Timsøe today. This isn't just abstract theory for him, is it?
Not at all, Noah. It's incredibly personal. We are looking at a practitioner with over 40 years of experience in acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM. But the real hook here isn't just his clinical experience, it's his own survival. We're talking about a man who was diagnosed with stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer, given months to live, and essentially told to get his affairs in order. 4 years later, he's not just alive, he's thriving. So we have this unique opportunity to look at health through the lens of someone who has been both the doctor and the patient in the most extreme circumstances imaginable.
That's the kind of story that stops you in your tracks. Stage 4 lung cancer is usually the end of the conversation, not the beginning of a new chapter. I want to get into the mechanics of his recovery later, but let's start with his philosophy. Dr. Seo identifies 3 big mistakes people make when they approach their health. The first one is a heavy hitter, putting too much blind trust in the conventional medical model. Now, that's a spicy take in the 21st century. Is he anti-science?
It's nuanced, and that's what makes his perspective so valuable. He is absolutely not anti-science. In fact, he acknowledges that modern medicine is miraculous at diagnostics and acute crisis management. If you break your leg or have a heart attack, you want a hospital. But his critique is that the conventional model operates on a specific assumption, that illness is an inevitable natural occurrence of aging, and that the solution is almost always external intervention, a pill or a surgery, to suppress the symptom.
Right. It's the maintenance model. You maintain the disease state rather than resolving it.
Exactly. Dr. Seo argues that this approach ignores the body's factory setting, which is self-repair. Think about it. If you slice your finger while chopping vegetables, you don't have to mentally command your platelets to clot or your skin to knit back together. Your body just does it. It is hardwired for homeostasis. The mistake people make is assuming the doctor has the cure, when really the doctor usually has a tool to manage the symptom while the body does the actual healing. He believes we've outsourced our agency to a system that isn't designed to cure the root cause.
That distinction between treating the cause versus the symptom is the classic divide between Western and Eastern medicine. But I feel like we say that a lot, treat the root cause, and it becomes a buzzword. What does that actually look like in his practice? How does acupuncture specifically bridge that gap?
So we have to look at the technical breakdown of acupuncture. It's a practice that's roughly 3,000 years old. In the West, we often reduce it to pain relief, but the mechanism is much more complex. Dr. Seo explains that acupuncture is about signaling. The body is an electrical and chemical network. When you insert those fine needles, you aren't just poking skin. You are stimulating the nervous system to release chemicals in the muscles, spinal cord, and brain. You're essentially sending a memo to the immune system saying, hey, pay attention here.
It's like jumping a dead car battery. The car has the machinery to run, but it needs that spark to remember how to turn over.
That's a perfect analogy. Dr. Seo mentions that modern lifestyles, stress, blue screens, processed food create static in that communication network. We're in a constant state of sympathetic nervous system dominance, that fight or flight mode. Acupuncture helps switch the body back into the parasympathetic state, the rest and digest mode. That is the only state where deep healing can happen. He gave an example of treating someone for the flu or a cold. Instead of suppressing the fever with medication, he uses acupuncture to stimulate the immune system to work faster. He's not fighting the virus, he's sharpening the body's own weapons.
Which leads us to the second mistake he highlights, a lack of faith in the body itself. It feels like we've been conditioned to view our bodies as fragile, incompetent things that are constantly trying to kill us. But Dr. So is saying the opposite, that the body is incredibly robust if we stop getting in its way.
Precisely, and this is where his personal story becomes the primary evidence. When he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, his cousin, a radiographer, looked at the PET scans and basically saw a death sentence. But Dr. So approached it as a puzzle of environment. He asked, what environment did I create that allowed this cancer to thrive, and how do I change it? He didn't reject Western medicine entirely. He used immunotherapy to buy himself time, but he fundamentally changed his diet, his stress levels, and his daily priorities. He views the body's ability to heal as a default setting that we accidentally override.
I want to pause on that point about immunotherapy because I think it's critical for our listeners to hear. Sometimes in the natural health world, there's this dangerous purity test where people feel like if they touch a pharmaceutical, they've failed at holistic health. Dr. So didn't do that. He integrated them.
He did, and he's very pragmatic about it. He calls it buying time. The immunotherapy knocked back the immediate threat, which gave his holistic protocols, nutrition, acupuncture, meditation, the window they needed to rebuild his underlying constitution. It's not an either-or proposition, it's yes and. He even mentions that he trusts the medical model for what it is. He knows its limitations, but he also respects its power. That intellectual honesty is really refreshing. He's not selling a magic bullet, he's selling a comprehensive strategy.
It's the strategy of a general fighting a war on multiple fronts. You use the air support, but you also need the boots on the ground. Now, let's talk about the third mistake, because this one is less tangible, but perhaps the most potent: giving up hope. He referenced that famous rat study, right? The one about hope and survival.
Yes, that study is haunting. In the 1950s, a researcher named Kurt Richter did these experiments with domesticated rats. He put them in water to see how long they could tread before drowning. The rats that were put in with no escape gave up very quickly, sometimes in minutes. But if you rescued them right before they drowned, dried them off, gave them a brief rest, and then put them back in the water, they swam for hours, literally hours longer. The conclusion was that because they had been saved once, they had hope that they would be saved again. That belief physically altered their endurance.
That is absolutely wild. It suggests that resilience isn't just about muscle mass or lung capacity. It's about a cognitive expectation of survival.
And Dr. So applies this directly to human patients. He says one of the first things he asks a cancer patient is, do you want to live or die? It sounds brutal, but he needs to gauge their internal state. He talks about the cliff edge. When you're at stage 4, you are standing on the precipice. If you don't have that ferocious internal determination, that hope, the physiological treatments won't land the same way. He admits he struggled with depression and fear during his diagnosis, which is only human, but he treated hope as a discipline, not a mood. He had to wake up and choose to stimulate hope every day.
Treating hope as a discipline is a powerful framing. It's not just waiting to feel good, it's an active practice. I'm curious though, Dr. So has been doing this for 44 years. He's seen the field of acupuncture go from being considered fringe, almost witch doctor stuff in the West, to being fairly mainstream. How does he view that cultural shift?
It's been a massive evolution. He graduated in 1980. His membership number was literally 49. There were barely 50 accredited acupuncturists in his region at the time. Back then, people came to acupuncture usually as a last resort when everything else had failed. Today, you have professional athletes using it for recovery, the military using it for pain management. It's everywhere. But he notes that while the acceptance has grown, the understanding hasn't always kept pace. People still treat it like a pill. I'll go for one session and fix my back. They don't realize it's a cumulative therapy designed to retrain the body's energy systems over time.
It's the microwave mentality applied to a slow cooker therapy. We want the quick fix. I also wanted to touch on the concept of life force that he brings up. In Chinese medicine, this is qi. For a skeptical listener or someone very rooted in Western materialism, this can start to sound a bit woo-woo. How does he bridge that gap?
He's very clever about this. He refuses to get bogged down in the dogma of it. He says you can call it chi, you can call it God, you can call it spirit, or if you are a materialist, you can simply call it the body's electrical potential or life force. The label doesn't matter, the phenomenon does. He points to the unexplained medical cases, spontaneous remissions where terminal patients suddenly get better, or conversely, patients who are physically stable but suddenly decline and die after a trauma. There is an X factor in human health that biology textbooks haven't fully quantified yet. His job as an acupuncturist is to tap into that X factor.
That reminds me of the placebo effect, which we often dismiss as fake. But really, the placebo effect is just proof that the mind can alter the body's physiology. If believing a sugar pill is medicine can lower your blood pressure, then the life force or mind-body connection is a scientifically observable reality, even if we don't understand the mechanism.
Exactly, and Dr. So emphasizes the emotional component of this force. He discusses how trapped emotions, specifically anger or grief, can manifest as physical pathology. In traditional Chinese medicine, the liver is associated with anger. He talks about patients with liver issues who have unresolved anger from childhood. To a Western doctor, that sounds like metaphor. To an acupuncturist, that is a clinical map. You can't just treat the liver, you have to help the patient release the anger. It's holistic in the truest sense of the word.
I want to circle back to his specific success stories because we've talked about his own cancer, but he mentioned a regret, a disappointment involving a very famous person. That moment in the transcript felt very heavy.
It was. He spoke about a high-profile client he treated regarding esophageal cancer about 20 years ago. The client called him with the diagnosis, and Dr. Somiel looks back on that now with a sense of sorrow because he feels he didn't know then what he knows now. He couldn't save him. It's a humble admission that medicine, even natural medicine, is a practice of constant learning. He's not claiming to be a guru who has always had the answers. He's a researcher who is constantly updating his protocols based on new data and new experiences. That failure drives him just as much as his successes do.
That humility is crucial. If someone claims a 100% success rate, you should run the other way. But hearing about his current work, like the patient with prostate cancer who is seeing reversal of symptoms, it shows that his methods are evolving. He's also doing this remotely now, right? Which seems counterintuitive for acupuncture. How do you do acupuncture without needles?
That fascinated me too. He worked with a woman in Texas, he's in Australia, who had breast cancer. Obviously, he can't insert needles over Zoom, but remember, TCM is 80% lifestyle, diet, and emotional regulation. He guided her through the dietary changes, the specific herbal protocols, and the mental shifts necessary to change her internal terrain. She saw a reduction in her tumor markers just from that coaching. It proves his point that while the needles are a powerful tool, the real medicine is the lifestyle change that supports the body's self-healing capability.
It empowers the patient. It takes the power out of the doctor's hands and puts it back in the patient's daily routine. But I have to play devil's advocate here, Eloise. There is a danger, isn't there, in telling people that their illness is entirely within their control. If someone tries all this, the diet, the meditation, the acupuncture, and they still don't get better, does that mean they failed? Does it mean they didn't have enough hope?
That is the hardest question in this entire field, and Dr. So touches on it with a lot of grace. He acknowledges that sometimes, despite everything, the body reaches its limit. He talks about the mystery of why some terminal patients recover and some people with minor illnesses don't. He doesn't frame it as blame. He frames it as possibility. He's simply saying, don't leave any stone unturned. If you rely only on the chemo and eat fast food and stay stressed, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back. If you do everything right and still don't make it, you at least know you engaged every possible resource. It's about agency, not guilt.
That's a fair distinction. It's about stacking the deck in your favor, not guaranteeing the hand. So for the listener who is sitting there, maybe they have a chronic condition, maybe they're just feeling that general malaise of modern life, the insomnia, the bad neck, the stress. What is the actionable takeaway here? We can't all fly to the Gold Coast to see Dr. So.
The takeaway is to audit your own approach to health using his 3 pillars.
First, look at your reliance on the medical model. Are you using it for emergencies, or are you expecting a pill to fix a lifestyle problem? Second, check your trust in your own body. Do you believe you can heal, or are you living in fear of your own biology? And third, audit your hope. Are you actively cultivating a sense of purpose and joy, or are you just surviving? Dr. So's recovery wasn't a miracle in the sense of magic. It was the result of a rigorous, disciplined application of these principles.
And the context of age here is inspiring too. He's approaching 70, but he's talking about how he has more energy and clarity now than he did years ago. It challenges that narrative of inevitable decline.
Absolutely. He talks about 70 being the new 40, but more importantly, he talks about maintaining an inquiring mind. He says that curiosity is what keeps him young. He's a researchaholic. That mental flexibility, that willingness to learn new things and challenge his own old beliefs is likely a huge part of his neuroplasticity and his physical health. He didn't just accept his diagnosis, he got curious about it.
Curiosity as a survival mechanism. I love that. It strikes me that we are living in a time where we have more information than ever, but perhaps less wisdom. Dr. So represents a bridge back to that wisdom. He's reading textbooks that are 3,000 years old, translated from ancient Chinese, and finding that they are perfectly relevant to a guy with a smartphone and a stressful job in 2024.
So if we zoom out, the big idea here isn't just go get acupuncture. It's a call to reintegrate. We've spent the last century dissecting the human being into parts: a liver doctor, a heart doctor, a brain doctor. Dr. So is reminding us that there are no parts. There is only the whole, and treating the whole is the only way to get true resolution.
And that resolution requires participation. You can't be a passive observer of your own life. Whether it's fighting cancer or fixing insomnia, you have to show up. You have to be the primary investor in your own well-being. That's what Dr. So did. He faced a death sentence and decided to participate in his own rescue.
That is a powerful place to land. It's easy to feel helpless when we get a diagnosis or even when we just feel run down. But the message today is that helplessness is a choice, and so is hope. The body is listening to what you tell it. If you tell it the game is over, it packs up. If you tell it we're fighting, it rallies the troops. Eloise, this has been a fascinating look into a world that I think a lot of us are curious about, but maybe intimidated by.
It's been a pleasure, Noah. Dr. So's story is a reminder that the final chapter hasn't been written yet for any of us.
If you know someone who needs a little bit of that hope today, maybe they're dealing with a diagnosis or just feeling stuck in the medical merry-go-round, send this episode their way. It might just be the perspective shift they need.